Hello there and welcome to another episode of the Terrace Scottish Football Podcast. My name is Craig Telfer and once again I am joined by my close associate Shaughan McGuigan.
Hello there.
And you know what happens when the Brian Matthews and the Victoria Oberhor of the Terrace get together. That's right, we are going to start in the scripted reality TV show Glow. We'll share a scene which is revealed one of us has been having foursomes with James English, of all people, and two other girls. We'll star in the MTV show Just Tattoo of Us, where one of us, a massive Rangers fan, is given a tattoo of a Celtic badge in revenge for supposed infidelities. And we'll set up a couple's Instagram page that hasn't been updated since 2019. And in the subsequent years, that might just give us the time we need to talk about some lower league Scottish football.
I do enjoy the clips of Glow that you've started putting up on Instagram. I've never watched an episode, but I must admit those clips that you put up, they do interest me. They do tempt me into watching a whole episode.
Yes, for reference, Shaughan is talking about, as we mentioned, the scripted reality TV show Glow. There are 3 episodes from Season 2. Season 2 Episode 1, Season 2 Episode 2 and Season 2 Episode 3 are available on YouTube. You can look them out just now. And it's beguiling television. It's badly made, badly performed, and it's a real it's a real time capsule for that sort of moment, that sort of a pre-pandemic moment where anything felt possible. And this production company took a punt on making a reality TV show in Glasgow.
So there's only 3 episodes available to watch. How many did they make?
I don't know. There's somebody has made a watch along of episodes 1, 2 and 3 from season 1. They're basically they're sort of shorter videos with quite sarcastic commentary either over the top of them. And it's a real shame. I wonder if the guy actually just has those episodes and could upload them so he could watch them as nature intended. There must be someone is sitting on all this Glow content, and it'd be great for it to be uploaded. But in the meantime, please check out my Instagram every couple of weeks where I will upload a clip at a time, really giving you everything you need to know about Glow.
Also, that episode, or certainly that moment from, was it Just Tattoo of Us? Is that what you said it was called? I've seen that a couple of times. Again, extraordinary television.
Extraordinary television, yes. I mean, I don't really want to ruin it for anyone because you should really seek it out on your own time. But effectively, Brian and Victoria, they are in a sort of tempestuous couple, fairly tumultuous, lots of arguments. And out of revenge for his infidelities, she gets him a tattoo on his body of the Celtic crest, and he's an enormous Rangers fan. And his reaction is absolutely hilarious. And it's cut as well to the sound of Celtic bagpipes as well. It sort of adds a comedic element to it. Anyway, enough about... listen, you want to talk about Rangers and Celtic, you're in the wrong place. I'm telling you that right now. You are in the wrong place because, Shaughan, we are going to be discussing the big games from the Championship, another match from League One, and a third and final fixture from League Two, and we'll also talk about the action from Tuesday night. Before we get started, I just want to thank you for spending time with me for the second time today. You and I were filming the first episode of the new block of episodes for A View for the Terrace. I had a good time. How was it for you?
Yeah, really enjoyed it. Always really look forward to coming back. I thought it was good. I thought it was hopefully a decent episode. Yourself, myself, and Robert Borthwick. I felt like there was some decent stuff in there, so hopefully it all comes together and people enjoy watching it.
I agree. I think the first episode back from any block is always the best to do, I think, because it's basically recapping all the daft stuff that's happened. So effectively, it's like a list episode, but not every list episode gets to talk about Wilfred Nancy. So that in itself was an absolute pleasure to do. One of the disappointing things about making the show and it only running for a certain number of episodes at a time rather than over the course of the season is we completely missed that. We weren't able to discuss that, and that's a real shame. That is a real moment in time. I'm sure at some point, Shaughan, when we're hosting these podcasts, it'll be the Wilfred Nancy and the Ethan Ampadu's of the Terrace get together. That's right. We're gonna come over from the United States and run your football club into the ground. Right. Before we get started, Shaughan, unfortunately, we've got to begin with some corrections and clarifications And unfortunately, it's a correction to an addendum from last week's show. So we really are tying ourselves in knots at the moment. We mentioned Mateusz Zukowski's 11 goals in 11 games for FC Magdeburg after he was moved from fullback to striker. I said that was nothing to do with Scottish football. Incorrect. He actually had a spell at Rangers between 2021-2022, and he made his debut for the club in a 3-0 win over Annan Athletic in the Scottish Cup alongside
Aaron Ramsey.
Yes. So a real red letter day for the club. Thank you to Jordan Govan for getting in touch to let us know. I'm glad somebody's been paying attention, because I certainly wasn't, and I don't think you were either. But listen, not everyone can be in the pitch at the same time they saw Aaron Ramsey hit a good corner.
I suppose as well, I should maybe clarify that, because I believe it was brought up in the Discord that last week I looked very, very angry because the contact list was down at Haymarket Marks and Spencer's train station. Now, that person was absolutely correct. I was hugely annoyed because basically I was going to, it was a Wednesday night, and I had to get the train from Haymarket right through to Airdrie. I'd managed to get away from work on time, which doesn't always happen. I thought, right, I'm going to have just enough time to go into Marks and Spencer's, get something for my tea, and then get the train to Airdrie. And then the wee woman was just outside saying, oh, like, we've only got, unless you've got cash, you're not actually going to be able to buy anything. And I realised, I was like, right, how long have I got until my train? I said, like, 4 minutes. I go, right, well, I don't have enough time to run across the road, get anything, so I just had to jump on the train. So my well laid out plans had turned to dust. So I was very annoyed. So I don't know who it was that observed me, but they were spot on.
You know, Sean, you're very annoyed. I'm very annoyed, Sean. I just want to put out there to the viewers, Sean and I's public transport habits should not be subject for people to pass comment on. I should be allowed to go on a bus and feel safe. Sean should be allowed to put things back on the shelves in Marks and Spencer's if he doesn't have the correct change and feel safe. You know, just because to a very small extent we are public figures, we do deserve a degree of privacy. Please respect that. Now, Sean, we'll start this podcast properly, finally, by looking at the big game at the bottom of the championship between Airdrieonians and Greenock Morton, and it's a game that finished 3-1 to the Diamonds. Michael Garrity put Morton ahead early on, but it was quickly cancelled out by a very good goal from Dom Thomas. Cammy Ballantyne was red carded after 36 minutes, and things would go from bad to worse when Thomas got his second of the match shortly after the restart. Things would go from worse to shit when Morton went down to 9 men after Curtis Main was sent off. And things would go from shit to that scene in The Visit when a teenager got a dirty nappy shoved in their face when Charlie MacArthur put the game beyond doubt late on. This was Airdrie's first home league win since late October. They are 9th place with 26 points, and Morton are in 7th with 30. And things are beginning to look very tasty in the championship, and it kind of feels that no one's really safe, because after Tuesday night's game between Dunfermline Athletic and Ross County, they're just 10 points separating 4th place from 10th place. Some teams seem a bit safer than others, but it just shows to show you a bad run of form can see you topple down the table, and likewise, a good couple of results can see you move off the bottom. Sean, give me your thoughts on Airdrieonians 3, Greenock Morton 1, por favor.
Yeah, I mean, just a really a much needed win for Airdrie, put it that way. Like they've had a lot of plaudits recently, and I realise where they're coming from in terms of the team has definitely got better under Aaron Taylor-Sinclair. I think there's maybe only 3 or 4 teams picked up more points than Airdrie during his tenure, so clearly a far better side than before he took over. They got a lot of compliments about their style of play. And I think they maybe had 2 live games in a row. Did they maybe play St Johnstone and then Partick Thistle? Might have been 2 Friday night games. It was
St Mirren and St Johnstone. So it was. And I think on both occasions there was a case to be made that they were quite unlucky. Certainly they gave St Mirren a good game, and they probably should have taken something from the 1-0 defeat at St Johnstone.
And I think after both games there was chat about, well, if they continue to play like that, then they won't end up relegated. However, like up until, like, since beating Morton I think it was midway through December. The only game they'd won since then was against Dunfermline. So it's all very well playing football the right kind of way or whatever they were getting compliments for. But if ultimately it leads to no wins, then it doesn't really matter. So they desperately needed that win. And it's a hard game to judge the fact that Morton got 2 players sent off. Like, you don't want to be too harsh on Morton, because even down to 10, it looked like Morton actually played okay. But from an energy perspective, just a hugely needed 3 points for them.
I think so. Just, we can talk about the 2 red cards now, because I think they're quite interesting. I think, and it ties in with what you're saying, that Ian Murray found the game really difficult to analyse because of incidents in the game. He said he would need to take a look at the red cards back. I'm not sure why, given the fact that Cammy Ballantyne's one happened 1 yard in front of him. But we'll talk about the 2 red cards. Cammy Ballantyne was sent off for a pretty hard challenge on Lewis Strapp. And later on in the match, Curtis Main was sent off for a very over the ball tackle. Forgive me, I can't remember who that was on. But what do you think of the red cards? You think they were justified?
In terms of Cammy Ballantyne's, I can understand why it was a red card, because maybe the ferocity they went in, and probably because of, I think both red cards might have been on Strapp, were they? Potentially. Anyway, certainly the way Strapp reacted and the kind of pace that he hit him, I could understand why it was a red card. I did think he played the ball, and I know playing the ball doesn't necessarily mean it isn't a red card. If it had been a yellow, I could have understood that as well, but I didn't necessarily think that a red card was a poor decision from the referee. I did think it was understandable. I thought that was worse. Although he didn't go in with quite as much pace as Ballantyne did, he was well over the ball. I mean, he caught him a lot higher on his leg. Yeah. Both were just stupid. Like whether, like, certainly, even if you're going to talk about the first one about how it's a wee bit more debatable, like, regardless, like, I mean, it's on the halfway line, it's right next to the dugouts. To go in like that is silly. And Murray said something about we gave the referee a decision to make.
Yeah, and
it was totally unnecessary. And then Main's, again, it's
dumpling.
I mean, a position where Morton weren't they in any danger at that point in time. It might actually have been in. It was maybe in.
It was
Airdrie's half, actually, when he made the challenge. So 2 totally unnecessary challenges, and that's probably, for Ian Murray's perspective, that might be the kind of worst thing about them.
I think so. I'd agree on both counts. I thought the Ballantyne one, it looked like a hard tackle, and the fact that you hear the from Strapp, that kind of plays into it. You think the guy's really hurt, and I think you can maybe hear the clattering of the boots. Yeah. I think a lot of the time when you just hear the studs kind of clicking off each other, that makes things sound worse, and you think that there's perhaps a greater degree of infringement. But you're right in time you say, like, the ball went the opposite direction, so Ballantyne did win the ball. It was just very, very forceful. So I have a degree of sympathy with Ballantyne for that one. The one in Curtis Main, no, it's you. What are you diving in at that part of the pitch for? There's no one, there's no one else around him to support him. Just go and close him down. If it's go and make him play the ball infield, so it gives you your teammates a chance to come out. Don't jump into him and scissor him like that. I mean, I thought it was a stick-on red card. The boy who's doing the media for Morton did not agree, because you hear, are you having a laugh, referee? That's a joke. And then the Airdrie commentator sort of between titters is like, oh, someone in the Morton media team over there isn't happy.
I presumed it was a Morton fan, but it was very, very funny the fact there was somebody that's like, whether it's doing the match report or their commentator or whatever. Very, very funny.
Definitely. Now, the opening goal came from Michael Garrity, and I suppose from Aaron Taylor Sinclair's perspective, you'd be very disappointed at the fact it was effectively a punt up the park that opened up the game. Can't quite remember who it was that got tackled for the first goal. Can't remember who it was that played the ball down in the park.
I think it was Ian Wilson that sent the ball down the park, and then Craigie Ross doesn't do a very good job of defending it.
I thought it was really impressive play from Garrity, though. It was good strength. One of those when you go hip to hip. The fact that you're just able to sort of bounce him like that, you completely take him out of the game. And it's a really good finish as well, just sort of like across the goalkeeper and into the net. But the same token, it's a punt up the park. You shouldn't really be like losing goals like that at this level.
And you just want and I know Craigie Ross isn't the biggest centre half, but you do want your defender to be a good bit stronger in that situation. So from a defensive perspective, it was a really poor goal to lose.
But what a way to come back into it, though. This is from Dom Thomas. It's a good team goal in a way, just how the constituent parts all work together. But it's a good team goal. It's like having a cake with a fucking 2-ton cherry on top that just dominates everything else. So yeah, the constituent parts are like, but wow, look at the finishing touch here. And the fact that Dom Thomas takes the ball is I think it's about 45 yards from goal, 45 yards from goal.
Yep.
The fact that he rides a tackle in the middle of the park, closes in, then hits a shot with his right foot that seems to just completely catch Stone off guard and goes into the net. That's a really good goal, and it's great to see Dom Thomas. Enjoyed watching his post-match interview for this one, because it looks like he has a new lease of life and he's enjoying himself. And when you can score two very good goals, the two very important goals in this one as well, that's a huge boon to him, huge boon to the championship in general, because these are the guys that you want to see playing.
Yeah, I mean, in terms of most disappointing signings this season, Dom Thomas is probably one. Now, whether that's down to him maybe not doing whatever Scott Brown expects him to do, whether that's on the park or on the training field, no idea. But when he came back to the Premiership, I thought, right, really good signing. Looking forward to seeing him again. Hopefully he's terrible against Raith Rovers, but regardless, Clyde is back. And I barely got a look in at Ayr. And I suppose, and maybe Scott Brown isn't embarrassed by it whatsoever, but the fact that Ayr are struggling so much in front of goal in terms of creating chances, and then they send Dom Thomas out on loan and he's scoring, one exceptional goal and then another that's very, very good. Maybe doesn't it look great on Brown?
I think he's actually not just on loan, Shaughan. He's actually signed on a permanent basis at Airdrieonians.
Really? I thought he was just on loan till that totally passed me by. There was a permanent deal. Fair play.
No, permanent deal. Yeah, it's right. And the second goal as well is really well taken. In fact, and I can see Murray was disappointed from that. It's a throw it into the box, and he knows. He's obviously watched the Airdrieonians enough times. He knows what Lewis Strapp's all about. You, Shaughan, know what Lewis Strapp's all about. We all know what Lewis Strapp's all about. Those big booming throw-ins into the box. And the fact that it isn't dealt with, it's a good finish. And I think it's unfortunate for Morton and for Murray that it falls to the one player on the park that can finish like that. For it to come to the penalty spot, for him to hit it so sweetly on the volley. Unfortunate, but avoidable at the same time, if you know what I mean.
Yeah. And I suppose by that point, they're already down to 10 men. So maybe from a defensive perspective, they're not as set as they might have been at the start of the game. The fact they're down to 10 and their right back is a way off. I think Sturton does do. But I mean, firstly, Lewis Strapp's throws are both long, fast, and flat. So with the greatest will in the world, it's very difficult to defend against them. At the best of times, I think Sturton does well to get a flick on, to get it kind of eventually drops to the edge of the box. And as you say, there's a few players that could drop at the edge of the box and they wouldn't be able to do too much about it, but his technique is just very, very good. It's a really good finish.
And then the icing is put on the cake when the 9 men are sworded by Charlie MacArthur. Effectively, the way he reacts to that header from close range, it looks like somebody reacting to a bang they've heard outside. It's like, oh, like that, and the ball's just in the back of the net. And what I mean by that, he doesn't really have to do much. It's a corner kick into the box, and there he's there, boom's just able to nod it into the net. I suppose for this one, we'll look at it from the Airdrie perspective as well. As you said there, a much needed win, and I think it's vindication maybe maybe it is vindication. It's quite difficult to try and analyse when you play pretty much half the game against 9 men, I beg your pardon, you play half the game against 10 men, and then you kind of play in the kind of 50 or so minutes against 9 men. That's quite an easy thing to do. But I suppose it's vindication for the kind of way they play, because imagine if you are having to chase the game, a team who are so comfortable in possession and so good at rotating the ball, and have a player like Dom Thomas in the ranks who can make something out of nothing. They're probably the worst kind of team that you can come up against.
Aye, I mean, I think what I felt watching it was, if I'd been an Airdrie fan over the last kind of week or two, after those kind of good performances that didn't, but they still failed to get anything from the game. I mean, I watched them in the Challenge Cup semi-final. I thought they were poor. I thought they were really poor that night. Wraith weren't much better, but they were slightly better. And after I left that game, my opinion was that the Airdrie would go down. I think the huge positive from since then is that not just the 3 points, but Sturton looked like he had a decent impact. I thought he was on the periphery a wee bit in the semi-final. And Dom Thomas is, I mean, to say he's finding his feet would be an understatement because he scored 2 brilliant goals. But I think it was definitely a concern in his first 1 or 2 games about the fact he hadn't played a lot of football, the fact he looked a wee bit off it in terms of fitness. But he's definitely finding his feet. So if he continues anything like what he showed at the weekend, and Sturton can grow into that forward and striker that they desperately need, and they continue to play the good football that we know that they can, then suddenly maybe they're not the favourites to go down.
Yeah, they've got that cooperation agreement with Dundee United. I know that there were points in the season there was maybe fans wondering where's the benefit from this, because the players they just weren't available. But having guys like Owen Sturton there, I'm sure he is part of the cooperation agreement.
Yes.
He's one of the players they've been able to sign. I remember seeing him at Montrose last season thinking, that's class, he's got a bit of a future in the game. And playing at Dundee United earlier in the season, I'm sure they played at Celtic Park and he went clean through and goal and fluffed a chance that maybe a more experienced striker would have taken. But I think that he's definitely got something about him, and hopefully he can show that Airdrie, and therefore hopefully can do the same thing at Tannadice at some point in the future. As for Greenock Morton, I think this is Ian Murray's had a difficult start at Morton. It took him a long time actually before the team were able to play a match. The first game they came up against Stennismuir and were embarrassed, I think, in the Scottish Cup when they lost that match 4-0. Since then, however, 2 wins and 2 draws, good stuff. But then you lose to Queen's Park 3-2, then you lose to Airdrie 3-1 there. And those are the, not that you want to warn everyone, but those are 2 teams now who, because of those results, that's helped narrow that gap at the foot of the table. And I think Morton have perhaps unwittingly just made things a whole lot spicier in the relegation battle. And one of the things I did find about Murray's post-match interview was it was quite critical of some of the fringe players of the team, I thought, when he said that over the last couple of weeks you've been relying on the same players, but now because there's injuries, I'm sure it was Aaron Lyle was subbed on and had to be subbed off again in the match.
Is it Ruben? Is it Latopa or Lapota White? I think he got injured as well. So they had
that's right.
They had the 2 red cards and the 2 injuries. So as you say, they are now. He was critical, or it sounded like he was being critical. That's how I picked up of his fringe players. But now for presumably the next couple of weeks, he's going to be very much reliant on those fringe players.
Yeah, because the other one we mentioned about Aaron Lyle coming on and coming off, he had to replace Michael O'Halloran after 13 minutes, who himself was injured. So that's the challenge. Like, Murray's laid down a gauntlet for the fringe players. Like, this is we have no choice but to turn to you. You are going to have to show us what you're worth. And unfortunately for Morton, that begins with a home tie against St Johnstone at the weekend. How do you see that one going?
I mean, the worst possible fixture for them. Albeit they've given St Johnstone difficulties this season.
Yeah.
But like as you said, I mean, a couple of weeks ago I was like, do you know something? That's 4 games without defeat. Now it looks like potentially Murray's getting a lot out of these players, more than maybe Dougie Imrie was getting out of them. Maybe they could trouble the top 4. But then everything is concertinaed up since those 2 defeats to Queen's Park and Airdrie. And I don't see them getting anything out of this at all. I mean, Murray said that they need to be careful, or they could be in a bit of bother or a bit of trouble, was what he said. And I think they might be after this, because I think it'll be a St Johnstone win.
And maybe in the biggest game of the whole weekend, we've got Queen's Park versus Airdrieonians. I'm not sure it's quite a 6-pointer, but it feels like a win would go a huge way for either side. How do you see that one turning out?
I have been impressed by Queen's Park recently. It feels like, especially after losing Fowler, you just or certainly I did. I wrote them off at that point. And while they've lost maybe the best player or one of the best players in the division, it feels like they have managed to, like, Shaughan Crichton has done a really good job of galvanising different areas of the park. So up front, they're certainly not better, but there's a different option with Todorov, and I think further back they have maybe improved the midfield, and I think Scott Martin's a good signing, for example.
Yeah.
Queen's Park at home, I'll go for a home win. Queen's Park to win.
I'm going to go for a 1-1 draw for this one. I think both teams are going to be left disappointed for this one. And just on the bottom of the table, we mentioned right at the start there about Ross County being bottom. They were beaten on Tuesday night by Dunfermline Athletic. I don't know if you had the opportunity to look at the highlights for that one yet.
Not yet, no, but it sounded very, very one-sided.
Going by the highlights, it was very one-sided. Callum Morrison scored 2 outstanding goals, and I think that Dunfermline played well, and Dunfermline it's a great win for Dunfermline. It builds on the victory over Queen's Park at the weekend. You beat Queen's Park, you absolutely sword Ross County, and then you've got a very, very presentable cup tie against Aberdeen coming up. So that's really, really exciting for Dunfermline Athletic, but that win galvanises them going into that tie. That's for Ross County. How on earth do you make up your mind about what this team can do? I mean, you chose not to go and see them. They beat Wraith Rovers 2-0 at the weekend, but what were reports about them from that? Have you spoken to anyone who was there?
I've not spoken to anybody that was there. I've watched the highlights and kind of read what went up on Pie and Bovril. I think, and I know it always sounds like sour grapes when somebody says this, but it looked like two poor teams. But albeit that Ross County very much deserved the win. Wraiths defending from, well, actually 3 set pieces, because there was absolutely nothing wrong with the goal that Ross County had disallowed at 0-0. But other than that, like from open play, there was very little created by either side. It looked like a fairly poor game. I did wonder if Ross County would kick on under Kettlewell, like initially they did, but they've become very hit and miss, and probably more miss than hit in the last kind of month or so. So, in fact, I potentially now make Ross County and Wraith maybe the two teams I expect to be 9th and 10th.
Yeah, on Ross County, I think that all the teams at the bottom, when they win a game, you don't get carried away by it, and when they lose a game, don't get carried away by it, because they just, when you think you've got them sussed out, they'll go and dig out 3 points, or they'll go and get beaten a game that they shouldn't have. But Wraith Rovers are a team that we haven't really spoken about as relegation candidates. I think for the best part of the season, for certainly the first 2/3 of the season, we've viewed them as a team looking to get into that top 4. But you think that the club need to maybe change their aspirations coming into this final stretch? I
see the team that they're starting to remind me of now is Duncan Ferguson's Inverness team, like that got relegated. And like defensively, they're Saturday aside, defensively they're pretty good. Like they keep a load of clean sheets. There's not too many other teams in the championship that have conceded fewer goals, but they just don't score. And it's not that they aren't clinical. It's not that they're wasting opportunities. They're not creating any opportunities. And I would say that is a far more worrying fact than if they were spurning chances. In terms of who they've brought in January, I think one of the biggest criticisms about them, certainly up top, was Jack Hamilton's kind of lack of movement. Like he's not mobile at all. They've brought in Innes Cameron, who is probably slightly more mobile, but again, I don't know if that's going to solve any issues that Wraith have. And then Andy Winter has come in as well. Now, I know he had a pretty successful loan period at Arbroath last season, albeit in League One. I think he was played as a forward though, and he was happy. Like his work rate was quite good, and he was happy to kind of work the channels. Wraith have been playing him out wide. Imre is kind of starting him on the right hand side. I don't think that suits him at all. And in the vast majority of games that he's played, and he's started a lot of games now, he has been anonymous to the degree that you kind of forget that he's even there. So certainly the players that they've brought in, I do think that Innes Cameron might be an upgrade over Jack Hamilton, but that isn't necessarily a huge compliment. So I don't think the January transfer window has fixed any of Wraith's concerns.
That's bad. That's not what I wanted to hear.
No.
I like you, and by proxy, I like Wraith Rovers. So I don't want to see them get into any bother. But I think they're a club that, I think we might have said this in a previous show, they just need a bit of a reset. And I think that get through to the end of the season, finishing 7th or 6th place, ideally, and then
even 8th would be absolutely fine.
don't get relegated. That's effectively, don't get relegated and kick on from next season. Excuse me, but we will drop into League One. Then we'll head to Palmerston, where Queen of the South were defeated 2-0 by Peterhead. Kieran Shanks got the first goal of the game from the penalty spot deep into first half injury time, and Jason Brown got the second 9 minutes after the interval. And Queen of the South's poor run of form continues. They've now lost 3 matches of the bounce. They're still in 4th place on 39 points. Peterhead, meanwhile, are closing in on them. They're in 5th place with 35 points, but they've got 2 games in hand over the Doonhamers. Shaughan, can you give me an opinion of sorts on Queen of the South 0, Peterhead 2, please?
I mean, the fact that these highlights lasted just under 6 minutes felt quite unusual. So I don't know if that's because, as in from a Queen of the South perspective, felt quite unusual. I don't know if it's because not very much happened, or maybe just the Queen of the South highlights compiler is just fed up, which is possibly understandable. Because this looked like, so bear in mind the highlights lasted about 6 minutes. I don't think there was any footage of Queen of the South doing anything until maybe like the 4th minute of the highlights, and even then it was a Nicky Clark, like a pretty tame effort from distance that Jack Newman gathered easily. I know Kai Kennedy hit the bar after that from distance, but this looked like, from what I watched and what I've read, this looked like maybe Queen of the South's poorest performance of the season. And bear in mind, a lot of times we talk to them about Queen of the South as being underwhelming at best. To say this might be their poorest performance of the season, I mean, that takes some doing.
When I saw the results drop, I thought, right, I need to cancel my plans for Saturday night so I can sit up to watch Peter Murphy's post-match interview. And when I did, it felt quite morose. This one is like sort of, imagine if Colin Hamilton really was processing bad news. That's the kind of territory we were in for this one, where it's 9 minutes long, and I do feel quite sorry for him. He sounds scunnered, like he's finding it really difficult to get to the bottom of why the team aren't doing well. And for him, the big disappointment, I know that he mentioned that they lost 3-2 against Montrose the previous week, but they showed loads of character, to go from 2-0 down to pull it back to 2 each, and it was only undone by like a genuine goal of the season contender from Craig Brown. That was an absolutely like superb, like, I know we spoke about last week's show, but see when you see it again, the way he was able to just let the ball come across him and hit him like that, just fabulous goal. This, however, just there was no character. He talked about his team. He felt as though they didn't impose themselves in the game, didn't win tackles or headers. He just thought the team were soft. A lot of the bookings that they took, I think Sandra asked him about the 7 bookings they got in the game, but it was for like dissent or just like trips and stuff that's down to frustration rather than, I don't know, this is the sort of things, maybe like hard tackling where you maybe go over the score a wee bit because you've got that competitive edge. And it just feels as though that since like over a month ago, when they got that 2 each draw with Inverness, Caledonian Thistle, you thought, well, that's a really good result. They've shown they can compete with the best teams in the division. Now you've got to go and beat the also-rans, and they just haven't been able to do it. A draw with Cove, lost to Alloa, lost to Montrose, now they've lost to Peterhead. And we're at the stage now where Montrose dropped points against Kelty Hearts on Tuesday night in a 1 each draw. But there's Montrose closing in on them a wee bit. Peterhead have got the opportunity to close in on them. And it's like, you don't want this season to fall away and drop out of the playoffs, but it could happen with that, especially if they're to reprise that degree of performance. The big challenge for Murphy is to make sure that doesn't happen again.
Yeah. I mean, then, like, going back maybe a month or so, although I didn't necessarily think it would have happened, like, there was an outside chance that they could potentially have caught up with Steny and Inverness. Now, that's very much not the case at all. We can forget about that. It's now all very much about staying inside the playoffs. And for a full-time team in a largely part-time league, that's not an ideal situation. And you were right in terms of interview. I thought that as well. He sounded a bit browbeaten. And I know we kind of laugh at Peter Murphy's interviews sometimes. He's quite bad for, in the aftermath of a defeat, kind of criticising the team that has just defeated them. Like you might talk about, they brought us down to their level. Like you'll kind of give that kind of overview. But this was very much a case of, I think it's the first thing he said, just that's not good enough. But what I did, not bristle at, but what I thought, I wonder if that will come back to bite you. And it was right at the end where Sandra says, and you've got 9 games left this season, something like that. And he goes, and some more. And I was like, whoa, not necessarily. There's some teams catching up with you, Peter.
I'm hoping he's talking about the playoff matches here, but yeah, 9 games, and then we'll see what happens, rather than saying, aye. I mean, it would take some, let's be honest, it would take some doing for Queen of the South not to finish in the top 4, but that is the worry, just that he talked about how mistakes have crept back into the game. And he's right. I mean, the opening goal, the penalty, because I don't think there was really much in this match, but the opening goal, it's quite a strong run down the left from Seb Ross, who's coming inside. But at the same token, I think it was Matty Douglas gives the ball away and allows him to advance, and then it's Jack Hanna that hooks him down just inside the box, and it's just inside the box. I can maybe see why Hannah's protesting it, but no one else is really protesting it. And it's the sort of thing where you think, God, we've just got the interval coming up. By diving in like that, you've completely reshaped the entire match.
Yeah, everything changes at that point. Actually, I had a wee bit more sympathy for Jack Hanna than I did Matty Douglas. Like, Matty Douglas completely misjudges the flight of the ball, and then Jack Hanna has to do something. Now, he doesn't have to do that. Like, he doesn't have to like lunge in with such wild abandon. But I did have a wee bit of sympathy for him, because I think there was a huge element of panic. I have to do something here. But it was poorly executed, to say the least. But as you say, at that point, Peter Murphy must have been thinking, right, we've been rubbish here. However, it's 0-0. Let's get them in. I'll maybe change something around. It could have been worse. But everything changes in that moment. And then I think they conceded again, like within 10 minutes at the start of the second half.
And again, it's the thing is, it's annoying. You've just lost, in his eyes, like a soft goal from a mistake, giving away a penalty at a really inopportune moment. And then he spoke about, quite similar to Murray there, like talking about like Lewis Strapp's throw-ins. He's talking about they know that Peterhead are good from set pieces. You know, he told the team they're good at set pieces. And so the player who's perhaps the strongest attacking threat is Jason Brown, the captain. And it's the second phase. And he doesn't, it's good movement from Brown. And he does put his head in, I suppose, where it could get hurt. So you've got to compliment his bravery. But at the same token, it's just, he just stoops to sort of flick it into the net past Ross Stewart. It feels like it's well taken in some respects, but at the same token, it's like it doesn't feel like they've had to work hard for it, if you know what I mean.
I think as well, when I think it's maybe Seb Ross. Is it Seb Ross who puts a cross in?
Yes,
cross comes in for the left anyway. And like when you look into the area that he delivers it in, like, I think Peterhead might have at least 3 players in that area to Queen of South too, so they're outnumbered in that area of the park as well. And I think Ross Stewart doesn't know whether to kind of stay or come. It's just a kind of lack of organisation, maybe a lack of responsibility as well. And I suppose that maybe all that feeds into this narrative from Murphy that there's an issue with confidence. But I think like that in itself is a concern, because how do you improve a team's confidence when they're all struggling with it? That's not just I'll change my forward or I'll change my right back. How do you inject confidence? That feels like a really difficult thing to do.
As well, he's spoken, and we're really leaning on Peter Murphy's interview because there is, like you say, it's 9 minutes long, so there's so much to glean from it. But talking about Curtis Guthrie coming on, it was a half-fit Curtis Guthrie coming on and winning headers. And I think he put himself about quite a lot more than Nicky Clark done. We're really yet to see Nicky Clark at his best since he's returned to Palmerston. But there's Guthrie winning headers, but just no one there to take advantage of it. And I found this really interesting where Murphy was talking about the game petering out, and he said it looked as though Peterhead were taking the piss, and then he stops himself and he says liberties. So I think by that point in that match where Queens are chasing the game, Peterhead full of confidence and were able to pop the ball around and just defend well. And I don't mean by taking liberties or taking the piss, but maybe just like I don't want to use the term showboating because I don't think there's any Lee Trundles in the pitch for Peterhead. Or maybe there is actually. Like, Peterhead do have quite a flashy team in that regard. There's quite a wee bit of flair in their ranks. Guys who maybe try a bit of the unexpected. But aye, again, Peterhead, they're a team who, if they want to, can keep the ball well, and you've got to be up it to try and press them. And if you don't, then that's the consequences. I don't know, Shaughan, if it's anything to do with, I don't know if you noticed this right at the start of the game. When the team run out, they run out to Bootylicious by Destiny's Child. And I think the stadium announcer is obviously, he's waiting to play, because suddenly like half the team have come out, and then it goes to Kashmir by Led Zeppelin, which is obviously a bit more dramatic and has a bit more get up and go about it. But just when you get the player, I don't think you're ready for this, Jelly. I don't think it is so.
I must admit, I thought that was a strange thing to come out to. But is that not just a piece of music taken from a rock song from the 70s?
No, Kashmir by Led Zeppelin was taken by Puff Daddy for... But
is Bootylicious, is that not a sample from an old song as well?
It's right, let's see, we're going to do this in real time, right? Bootylicious, right?
I could be totally wrong.
See if Bootylicious samples Kashmir, I'm going to look like a fucking idiot, right? I hope not, right? Let's see, we're going to do this in real time. We're going to get
it was sampled from a classic rock track.
We're going to get Bootylicious up, right? There's Bootylicious. There's the... Right, let's see. Bootylicious. It's... Listen to Edge of 17. Maybe I'm completely wrong. Maybe they just do come out to Bootylicious. No. I'm positive, right? I'm positive it was Bootylicious, and then it cut quickly to Kashmir by Led Zeppelin. I'm positive.
I think you might be mistaken. I think
I'm not mistaken.
Right, okay.
Right.
Well, listen, maybe we can cover this in clarifications next week.
Right, and we will. And you know what, Shaughan? I'm going to let you lead corrections and clarifications next week. But you apologise to me. 100% that was Bootylicious into Kashmir. And listen, if you're listening at home, please go and watch the Queen of South highlights and let us know who's right. Myself, that it's Bootylicious into Kashmir, or Shaughan's right, and it's just the guitar sample from Bootylicious that comes to the fore at that point.
See, in terms of, because you're absolutely right, in terms of what when Murphy was talking about, because he actually says taking the piss and then thinks about it. He goes, I better not say that. I was trying to find anything online about what that might have consisted of, because if I was wondering if it was like, you know, when you get in a situation where a team is dominating, and then when fans know the game's safe, and I'm not saying this is what happened at all, but like they just start popping the ball off, and then the fans will go, ole.
Yeah.
So initially that was, I wonder if something like that happened. The only thing I was able to find was Peterhead kept the ball in the corner for ages. So I don't know if that's what had potentially annoyed him. But I'd be interested to find out more about it.
I don't know if does the ole come, is it from like bullfighting? I imagine that's the sort of thing when a matador gets a thing to run at his cape and he goes, way!
Yeah, I suppose it does, yeah.
Very cruel. That's why when people get gorged by a bull, when they get in its way, you don't really feel sympathy for them. I don't see anyone come to harm. But if you're running down the middle of a narrow Spanish street and a bull's coming running at you, you're in the wrong place at the wrong time. It's simple as that. Speaking of Shaughan just being in the wrong place at the wrong time, I don't know if you watched Ryan Strachan's post-match interview. I could not make head nor tail of what he was saying above the sound of seagulls and the bloody disco that was taking place just over his shoulder. Could not make out a single word he was saying.
He was very, very enthusiastic. I'll say that for him. I thought it was quite interesting when he was talking about almost like suggesting that sometimes as a manager, you just can't do right for wrong, almost. Like he talked about, like after
really
he spoke about how
like
everybody was a 9 out of 10 and every single player done a wonderful job. He was talking about when, as managers, like how they're learning all the time. I'm not entirely sure what lesson he was describing, but regardless, I still thought it was interesting when he talked about it when they were 2-0 up against Stennismuir.
Yeah.
And there wasn't long to go. And they discussed potentially changing shape, and they didn't do anything. And then Stenny got it back to 2-2. And then when they were playing Kelty, they were saying, well, we're up here. Maybe we should change shape, because we didn't do it against Stenny and we ended up conceding. So they did change things around, but then conceded against Kelty anyway. So I just thought it was quite interesting how he was, or what he was talking about and how he was summarising it. But in general terms, Like it sounded like they could not be happier with the performance that they put in.
I like listening to the guys from Peterhead. It's the first time I've really heard from Ryan Strachan, because a lot of time it's Jordan Brown. If it's not Jordan Brown, it's Jamie McNee. And I think the pair of them are really good to McNee especially, who's the assistant manager to the two managers, which is an interesting dynamic. But I did listen to Ryan Strachan speaking here. And I suppose because he was really chuffed. Like they talked about it was the best away performance of the season, and it was so good because they had gone down there, they'd worked on a plan, and the team executed it like to the letter. You know, they covered the space well. I think they'd gone down to Palmerston earlier in the season. I think we might have covered that match in a podcast. They'd gone down there, had been well beaten, but were just much more comfortable then there. There was never really any points of jeopardy. Like as you mentioned, Kennedy hitting the bar was as good as it really got for them. And it's at the stage where Peterhead are they're quietly going about their business. You know, I think they're perhaps going under the radar a little bit. But it's in a good place where you have to leave players out of the team and to change things around. And that's good. Then when people are coming onto the pitch, they're still making a contribution. So it all just sounds really, really positive. Unfortunately, it's just not as interesting to talk about. When things are going well, it's not as much fun to talk about. And unfortunately, that's the case for Peterhead. But Shaughan, they are up against Cove Rangers at the weekend.
Peterhead's at home, aren't they?
No, it's at Balmoral Park.
Right, okay. In that case, that maybe makes it slightly different. As impressive as they were at the weekend, based on those 5 minutes and 59 seconds of footage, I think Cove might get something from this game. Even although their progression has very much went off the boil recently, I think it'll be a draw.
I don't know, man. I don't know. Like I got a good look at Cove Rangers last weekend when they played Sinnesmuir. The Warriors beat them 1-0, courtesy of Ollie White's goal. Don't know if you've seen it.
I haven't yet, no.
That's brilliant, man. I would have said, wow, that's one of the goals of the weekend. Then Yusuf Chermiti scores an overhead kick against Celtic. And well, that's put that to bed. But White, sort of Gregor Buchanan dribbles out of defence, slips in White, and White's in about 10, 15 yards into his own half, rides a tackle. The defender coming out towards him slips, so White sees it as an opportunity to kick the ball past him and run round the other side of him. Goes through and goal at an angle and just finishes across the goalkeeper into it. A really good goal. But having seen Cove Rangers 3 times now this season, Stennismuir have won all 3 matches 1-0, and I think that's the fact that that's the case. And Stenny have had to work quite hard in all those matches to get the 3 points in them. I think it says where Cove are, where they're good and they will give you a good game. They're just not quite good enough. I think if you look at a lot of their scores over the course of the season, it has been by the odd goal. And I think that's indicative of just the lack of quality in key areas. They will be buoyed by the fact that I think that the cooperation agreement players from Aberdeen will be available to them. They weren't available for them on Saturday there because I think they were playing for Aberdeen on the Friday night. And under the rules of cooperation agreement, there needs to be like a couple of days between games for player safety. So I felt a bit sorry for Paul Hartley in that regard, because I think it's maybe in their best interest to be playing a proper competitive game for Cove than it would be to playing a kiddies kickabout for Aberdeen. But nevertheless, Megginson might be back. He was missing from that match. It just feels like, I think I've said it before, but I do feel a bit sorry for Paul Hartley at times, just because he doesn't have much to work with. I think he's trying to make do and mend in a difficult situation, and they're still in, I think it's 8th place at the moment, but a win here would be huge for them. It's just I'm not sure. The other game, Shaughan, Queen of the South versus Stennismuir at Palmerston.
Based on current form, based on the fact that Stenny are doing really well in terms of grinding out results, that's a brilliant result for them on Tuesday night against Hamilton. I will go for a Stenny win here.
Fancy Stennismuir for this one as well. I think that the Warriors were in a little bit of a slump probably around the time the Falkirk game came around, when they drew with Peterhead. Didn't play well in that match at all up until the very end when they got the 2 goals, as you mentioned there. Didn't play well against Montrose. But then, since the Falkirk match, they've played Inverness Caledonian Thistle. They got a 1-1 draw there. Could have won that on another day. Followed it up with the 1-0 win over Cove Rangers, and then followed up with a 1-0 win over Hamilton Academical. And I was there on Tuesday night, and I think the 1-0 scoreline actually flatters Hamilton. I thought Stennismuir created a number of good chances, like maybe to win like 2 games, let alone 1. I think if the Warriors had won that match 3 or 4, I don't think there'd be any complaints. Just maybe like lack of precision in front of goal. Ross Taylor missed a good chance. Dickie Jamieson missed a good chance. Riley put a header right to the goalkeeper from free. Ultimately did the win. A really good team performance. And the fact that Ross Taylor's back fit, the fact that Matty Aitken's back fit, the fact that Leighton Grant's playing, Scott McGill's going to come back, it feels like the Warriors are in a good place. And on top of that, given what Peter Murphy said about Stenny in the last performance, I know that people at the team were annoyed by that. Gary Naismith had mentioned it in a post-match interview that felt that there was some managers are quite critical. She's like, I don't want any names, but some managers are critical at how the way we play. There's only one manager that's been critical about how Stennismuir play. So I think that'll be a big thing for the team. They'll really want to get the win there. So I'm fancying Stenny to win that one as well.
And do you think that Stenny are, so let's say regardless of, let's say they don't win the league, let's say they finish runners-up, do you think they are strong enough to get promoted regardless?
Yeah, I do. I mean, the only thing is, it looks like it's going to be Alloa Athletic who they take on, and Alloa just seem to cancel each other out. You know, there've been 3 games between them this season. It's been a win to Alloa and 2 draws. And that win, I mean, that's when Liam McFarland had an absolute outrageous game in goals. Yeah. Excellent first half performance there. But look at the teams in the Championship. I think last season, when Airdrie were in the playoffs, and Airdrie really came into form over the latter part of the season, where it was very difficult to see anyone other than them winning the contest. I just don't really see that from any other sides. I think that all the other teams are doable. There's stuff to like about them all. Like you say that County have got, like, on paper, good players. Queen's Park have reacted well after Josh Fowler's moved on. Airdrie play good football. They're one of the more eye-catching teams in the division. Stenny are all right as well, and Stenny have shown that they can raise their game against the bigger teams and they can frustrate things, and I think that the Warriors have a very good chance on that one. But just sticking with Hamilton, Shaughan, there was news that came out early in the week that said the board have reached an agreement with the Funding Globe about the outstanding monies owed to them. In a short statement on the website that was posted on Tuesday, I think it was, Hamilton Academical Football Club and the Funding Globe Limited are pleased to announce that a mutually agreed resolution has reached regarding the emergency funding provided to the club on 28th November 2025. Both parties are satisfied that this resolution represents a fair and constructive conclusion and one that enables the club to move forward with stability and renewed focus under its new ownership. I think by any metrics, that is good news, because I felt as though the Funding Globe, they were really the kingmakers as to whether or not the club lived and died. And I think it was perhaps in their best interest that the club didn't die or were liquidated, because they wouldn't have got their money back from that. So it feels like good news all round. Yeah, that's exactly what I was going to say in terms of it feels like there was a number of things that could have plunged Hamilton into even deeper trouble. But it did feel like their arrangement with that loan company was the biggest one. So the fact that now appears to be very much solved is huge for the future of the club. And hopefully now we're going to start talking about stuff that happens on the park rather than nonsense off it. Now, if you want to talk about nonsense that happened on the park, talk about young Crookston's red card against Stenny, where him and Riley got into a tussle. The pair of them got up, and then Crookston shoved him in the back of the head late on and was sent off when they were chasing the mat. So there you go. That's the on-field nonsense that we want to talk about. And Darren McKinnon being furious at fans for making fun of his very visible bald spot on the back of his head. Somebody shouted something at him, and he did that thing. There's about a good distance from that one where he just stares up at them for ages. And then that just encourages more people to shout down. So how do you solve that? He's going to just have to start wearing a hat. Yeah, or just like spray paint it like one of our friends does when he appears on regional BBC television. Darren, if you listen, we can pass you over someone's number. They'll tell you how they handle it. Anyway, for our third and the final match of the show, we'll take a look at East Kilbride's 3-1 win over Clyde at New Douglas Park. Despite Logan Dunnicky putting the Bullywee ahead late on in the first half, Kilby rallied after the restart goals from Gilles Baldi, Bobby McCluskey and Connor Young. Victory, East Kilbride's 6th in a row. They are top of the division with 50 points, but their lead has been cut to just 2 points after the Spartans defeated Stirling Albion on Tuesday night. Clyde, meanwhile, suffered their first defeat in 2026. They are in third place with 40 points. and you just wonder maybe if recent results may have killed off their title challenge. Nevertheless, Shaughan, you chose not to go to Ross County 2, Wraith Rovers 0. You chose to go to Clyde 1, East Kilbride 3. I have questions for you. Tell me about it.
I was a bit disappointed in Clyde. I thought they, just because of how good their form has been, and I know they've drawn loads of games, and I know it feels like they did spurn an opportunity in midweek against Dumbarton. I thought they would have maybe posed a greater challenge to East Kilbride. And I know, like Darren Young described it as a game of two halves, and Mick Kennedy felt that East Kilbride were particularly poor in the first half. The first half was just scrappy in general. Like although the ball probably spent more time in East Kilbride's half, other than the corner that East Kilbride scored from that Craig Hepburn didn't deal with particularly well, albeit it was quite a good delivery, and Logan Donachie had a kind of good-headed finish. Hepburn probably should have done better. Other than that, Clyde didn't really offer much. Hepburn didn't have much more to do than that. And in terms of the team that maybe looked the more dangerous, albeit it was played on the counter, like it was East Kilbride. Like especially, I thought Baldy had a really good game. He always seemed to have too much space in the middle of the park. And then McCluckie was a danger for the entire game. But even in the first half, when East Kilbride maybe weren't great, he had a couple of opportunities wide on the left. Again, probably had too much room, but couldn't quite kind of deliver the kind of final ball that they required. So I wasn't quite as unimpressed with East Kilbride as Mick Kennedy seemed to be. But in terms of the second half, just a kind of whirlwind, kind of 15, 20 minutes at the start of the second half, which it didn't kill off the contest because Clyde made changes and again spent more time in East Kilbride's half than vice versa in the final 20 to 25 minutes. But I think East Kilbride were quite comfortable. Again, quite happy to kind of sit back, play on the break. And although Clyde had a couple of penalty shouts, it was East Kilbride that hit the post and then missed a sitter in the last kind of 5 minutes. So if anything, Kilby could have won this game by more. I was just really, really impressed by them. You spoke about the fact that you saw them a week or two ago, and you spoke about the fact that defensively they seemed a lot more sensible. Would that be would that be like not doing the daft stuff that we've seen far too much from them this season?
I think it was a game against Edinburgh City where, they're a team that like to dominate possession, and I think there's sometimes when it can be possession for the sake of possession. And I think that's maybe something that Mick Kennedy and Simon Ferry are learning as the season goes on, that it's a greater challenge, that all the teams in the SPFL are just better coached and better switched on tactically than a lot of the sides in the lower league that they come up against last season. This game was Edinburgh City where they knew what Edinburgh wanted to do, and so just let them have the ball. And then when Edinburgh did come into the danger, they said, we'll take that off you please, and then just went up the park and got their 2 goals from it. So I think it's just understanding the level. You're not going to have it all your own way, so you do need to be a bit more flexible. And I think the pair, the management duo East Kilbride, are learning as the season goes on. And I think you're seeing that across those 6 victories. There's been something to like about every single one of them, the way they've gone about them. And I think that going by the highlights from this one, certainly the second goal, Bobby McCluckie's goal and Connor Young's goal, I thought they were really, really well taken. Baldy's was a good goal, but it was just bad from Clyde's perspective, the fact he was unmarked inside the box. But the other 2, Bobby McCluckie, really coming onto a game at the moment for East Kilbride. Really, really impressive. The fact that he looked like he was kind of indifferent loan spell at Stennismuir, really didn't get on very well at Hamilton Academical at the start of the season, but is now contributing every single week. The goal here is brilliant. It's the way he's able to take Baldy's pass in, and he's up against Mohamed Niang. And Niang's, if you go to run, who's going to go shoulder to shoulder? You think Bobby McCluckie is going to get bounced into the stand, but he does really well to sort of just get his body in front of Niang and allow himself to accelerate away from him. And it's a really good finish across Jay Hogarth and into the net for this one. So he's contributing, and that the third goal there we mentioned, just the calibre of the passing. It's all really quick stuff. That's what East Kilbride at their best at. That those forward players. And the fact that it's just like Robertson slips and Young, really nice wee cut passes through them, and it's a good finish. Clyde are looking for an offside, but there's not much chance of that being the case. But by the sounds of things, from going by the manager's interviews, it did sound like Clyde were the better team in the opening 45 minutes.
Probably in that, but only in that they had more territory than East Kilbride, if that's probably the best way to describe it. Like, they didn't really create too many opportunities. They didn't. I didn't think they really missed any opportunities. They didn't really bring out any saves. I didn't really think they missed any half chances. They just had a bit more of the ball, but without really doing much with it. I thought their intensity was good. I thought they played with a really good tempo, and I do think that East Kilbride were rattled to a degree, but only in terms of they couldn't, like, East Kilbride couldn't play their normal game that you would expect from them. But I thought defensively they dealt with it reasonably well. And in terms of East Kilbride's goals, I thought Nyang had a really poor game. Like, one of the first things he did right at the start of the game, he gave away the ball, and it was an easy pass to make, and it could have led to a decent Clyde attack. And I think he put it behind the player who was only 5 or 6 yards away from him. It was a really easy pass to make, and he didn't really improve from there at all. I thought he was really poor. In terms of, if you look at that first goal, or East Kilbride's equaliser, it's Spence that puts the ball in for Baldy. And you're right, it's too easy, and nobody's picking Baldy up. But it's Nyang that Spence takes the ball around. Like, he kind of steps inside, and Nyang is sold to dummy too easy. And in terms of the second one, as you say, you kind of expect him to just nudge McCluckie off the ball. But McCluckie just goes past him really, really easily. And at that point, I think he was taken off soon thereafter, and it was like, for a player that I think is a good player, like, we wondered how on earth, like, what went on at East Kilbride in terms of bringing him in and then leaving almost immediately. But he's had a mixed bag this season. But I thought he was poor on Saturday. And then in terms of the third one, again, although it's Robertson, who had a reasonably quietish game, I thought, by his standards, although it's him that puts in the assist for Young. Again, Baldy's involved. And I suppose that's just it now for League Two defences. Like, for maybe the first half of the season, you kind of felt if you can nullify Robertson, which is very much easier to suggest than to actually do, but if you nullify him, you might get away with it. But the fact that it's now, you've got Connor Young, you've got McCluckie, you've got Baldy who can find space in the middle of the park, and you've got John Robertson. I mean, that's difficult. That's really difficult to defend against. And the fact that they've won 6 in a row and are scoring kind of goals aplenty, it feels like they've had a really good January transfer window. And as much as Spartans are a good team and doing well, maybe the momentum has swung towards Kilby.
Both on the 2 points you made there, yes, completely agree. The players you've mentioned there, I think that Baldy's in great form at the moment. I remember seeing him, and that was a game where nobody played well, but it was a game against the Spartans when they lost 6-0, and Baldy, I think I mentioned the point that there was one point he made this 50 yards to put a slide tackle in, but they were 5-0 down at that point. You know, and I was like, I'd like to have seen that when the game started, please. That'd have been really helpful. But I think that there's times where I think that's just maybe collective head loss in that game, where just like no one played well. But what we're seeing from Baldy's now, like, playing well, scoring on a consistent basis, and he looks like he's enjoying himself alongside the rest of the team. And that front four, as we mentioned, all very, very fearsome. And it's all still within the Spartans. I know it's easier said than done, but the Spartans win all their games between now and the end of the season. They'll win the league. They've still got a game in hand. They win that, they'll go on top of East Kilbride. The teams are going to play each other again shortly. If they win that, and let's be honest, on past results, where they've won 4 of the 4 matches this season, they can do it. But they're hitting form at the right time, East Kilbride. I think it's fair to say, and I suppose that all they can do, while it is still very much the Spartans have the advantage, East Kilbride, if they just keep on winning, you know, and it's easier said than done. But at the moment, I wondered, after that Spartans game, you lose 6-0 and you play absolutely abysmally, and that's how you respond. You respond in the perfect way, where you just start obliterating teams, and you're doing it, and you're just showing this. You're showing a different side to yourself. And that's just generally impressive. But for Clyde, Shaughan, it's quite interesting, because I watched Clyde against Dumbarton. I bought a stream for it on Tuesday after we had recorded our podcast, and I think going into that game, given that Clyde had beaten Stirling Albion 3-0 on the Tuesday, so I was at that match. God, we're become the Clyde correspondents in this between the two. So all your Clyde matches covered. But they'd been really good against Stirling Albion. They obliterate Edinburgh City 5-0 at the weekend. They're really, really good. You're coming into a game taking on one of the worst teams in the division, and you don't really give it a go. There's a couple of incidents in the game. There may be a couple of refereeing decisions didn't necessarily go in their favour. But in terms of offering attacking threat, I think there might have been one, maybe two chances in the match that fell their way. And that's so disappointing because they could have moved at that point within, I think it would have been, 6 points from East Kilbride. And then this match suddenly has a greater degree of tension to maybe 5 points. Anyway, this match has suddenly got a greater degree of tension to because East Kilbride have to win to keep Clyde at arm's length. But now Clyde, you drop points against Dumbarton, and then you're by the sounds of things, quite comfortably beaten against East Kilbride. It just sort of feels like that's maybe the title challenge over.
Probably, yeah. And it might still end in promotion. Like the fact that they very rarely lose games. Clyde, this was their first defeat in 2026. So if it is to be the playoffs, it'll be very difficult. It'll be a very difficult side to come up against. But I think that's probably where the frustration comes from. Like as much as they've not lost too many games this season, they've certainly drawn far, far too many. Like that's been the trend this season.
It's quite funny. So just on that, just when Darren Young's been interviewed, we've only lost 4 games all season. We've had quite a few draws. Just the way his tone there was quite funny when he mentioned that.
He goes quite high pitched when he talks about the draws. You're right. I picked up on that as well. And I think maybe in terms of the draws, it comes from, well, you've touched on potentially why that. Even though they hammered Edinburgh, that's not been a kind of normal Saturday afternoon for them this season. And I do think maybe that's where they're lacking a wee bit. It might be up front in terms of, like maybe Scott Williamson has now did good a season as you would expect. Like Kyle Connell is maybe known more for his long throws and anything he's doing in front of goal. They've brought in Nathan Cannon. Will he make a difference? Darren Young spoke about him quite positively in general about it. He's like he came on for about the last 20 minutes. Not known for his goal scoring at Forfar. So I feel that's where they've been. That's probably what's let them down this season. And maybe it'll let them down in the playoffs, who knows. But if it doesn't end in promotion, there will be a sense of frustration at how many points they've essentially left on the table through all those draws.
I was reading the match thread for this on Pie and Bovril, and you had observed just how sort of frustrated Clyde fans are generally, and you got into a bit of back and forth with one of the supporters who maybe inadvertently proved your point. You tell us about what that was like.
You know something, it was just an observation. I thought it was unusual. So bearing in mind, like you and me we'll go to random games. So we will end up sitting with home fans that we've maybe never sat with before. And so I've never sat with Clyde fans before. And maybe I just so happened to be surrounded by particularly frustrated Clyde fans. But it wasn't what I expected. It felt very, maybe fractious would be the right term to describe it. Like bear in mind it was 0-0 and then eventually Clyde went in 1-0 up. But it was a group of fans that were just, there was a lot of moaning, put it that way, about the referee, about things that they felt were going against them. And when I just thought it was unusual. And when I'd kind of pointed it out on Pie and Bovril, I think the response was, well, like try supporting Clyde for the last 20 odd years or whatever and see if you would be any more positive. And I totally get that. But by the same token, I've sat with Stranraer fans. And that wasn't the kind of atmosphere that you got there, for example. So I just thought it was unusual. But I must admit, I wish I'd never mentioned it.
I got to say though, one of the things I really enjoyed about this, I think, and we've spoken about it before, I think it's worth speaking about again. Clyde TV's highlights, absolutely superb.
Yeah, really good.
Really good. And you know what I really liked about them? See how they, kind of similar to what Stranraer do, they spend a couple of minutes setting the scene, telling you who's available. They talk about the form of the teams. The music was used was the score from the Terminator. I thought that was brilliant. Added this incredible degree of drama to this pretty ordinary League Two fixtures. And I thought that the co-commentator he'd been listening to a lot of Ali McCoy's. I think I counted about 7. I tell you what, before going on to give something. But just really good stuff, man. Really good stuff. And when the match highlights are as good as that, it makes what you and I do just so much better, so much better. And they're long as well. They're like 15 minutes long. So you get the context at the start that helps you when, like, oh, so this is where Clyde are, this is where East Kilbride are. And then you get that you can see the passages of play and how they develop. You get replays and angles and all that different angles. And we've never even spoken about like Logan Dunnicky scoring, celebrating because he said the match mascot was his was Dunnicky's. Dunnicky was the match mascot's favourite player, so he promised to like a star jump or something like that to for a wee shout to them.
It seems like a strange thing for the mascot to ask for, but fair play, he asked for it and he very much got it. I was confused as to why he done it at the time, but it was explained thereafter.
Yeah, I also asked Craig Hepburn as well, listen, Logan Dunnicky's my favourite player. If a ball comes into the pop box, do you mind not jumping for it properly so he can score? Yes, I can. And yes, he did. Yes, he did. But up next, Shaughan, Clyde are taking on Forfar Athletic at Station Park.
I think that this will finish 1-1, like most other Clyde games.
Yeah, and then East Kilbride versus Elgin City. This is the teams have played each other 4 times already this season. East Kilbride have won all 4 matches. In the last meeting just a couple of weeks ago, East Kilbride won that match 6-1.
Aye, and that was that was a game that Alan Hale left was very spiky afterwards in his post-match interview. It might not be 6-1. But I do expect East Kilbride to have far too much for them. A comfortable win for Kilby.
Yeah, definitely. It's a very, very entertaining division, and we'll look forward to discussing more about it next week. But Shaughan, that should probably do us for now. I've not seen any highlights from the Spartans 2-0 win over Stirling Albion, so we can't really talk about that. But that's the Spartans that have beaten Annan Athletic 4-0. Albeit that was going down to 10 men midway through the match, and there's a 2-0 win over Stirling Albion. So they are certainly back at it after that disappointing defeat against Stranraer. So very, very exciting. All the divisions are really exciting, actually, between now and the end of the season. There's class, absolutely class. And we're just, Chris, we really are. There's only 25% of the season left. It's amazing. Great fun. Great fun. Yeah. Anyway, Shaughan and I, we have spent all day in each other's company talking about football, and we're absolutely exhausted. So, dear listener, you will please forgive us if we want to go to our beds. But if you are not exhausted and you want to listen to more from the Terrace, then please check out our Patreon, patreon.com/Terrace Podcast. For as little as £2 per month, you can access hours and hours and hours of world-class content about Scottish football. And believe me, it is really worth checking out. So, we'll leave it at that. Shaughan, thank you for spending the entire day hanging out with me.
No, thank you.
And you, the listener, whether you've been in your house or your car or the gym, probably not the gym. I can't imagine there's many people that work out who listen to this podcast. But nevertheless, whatever you have been doing listening to us, thank you very much. Enjoy your football, but unlike Peterhead, who we acknowledged well and truly took the piss out of Queen of the South in the latter stage of their game on Saturday, as acknowledged by their manager Peter Murphy, please do so respectfully. Thank you.